Welcome back to a Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes. It's Monday morning. I've ditched the Happy Mondays mug though on the Say So Jungle line because it isn't such a happy Monday. I'm Paul John Dykes. It's a full house. I've got Ian Conroy coming in from New Zealand. I've got Quinny dialing in, and also our very own Kev Graham. I don't know if Kevin's standing because that's what he does when he's ready to kick off. Yes, it is. Right, that's why he's standing. He's ready. Well, to be honest, on the morning of the game, I thought we were standing on the shoulders of giants. And then the headline goes, where did it all go wrong? It's all from the same album, of course. And I've got to say, before I get into the actual game and trying to analyse where it went wrong and what your opinions are on there and your frustrations, big shout out to everybody that joined us on Saturday because there was 430 at Barras Art and Design. We had a fan zone all set up for those who couldn't get a ticket for the game. And a big shout out, we had people in from New Zealand, Ian. We had people in from Canada. Dunoon, let's not forget Dunoon. Spain, we had even a couple of ladies in from Aberdeen, and they admitted it as well after the game. And we had Ian Roy. Ian Roy travelled from the comment section in Florida all the way to Barras Art and Design and joined us. And a big shout out to you, Ian. I don't know what your plans are today or if you're able to tune in, but that was tremendous to meet you.
I thought you actually meant he came for the comment section, like he manifested himself into like a being and like
possibly he did. Like, maybe he did. Because my memory
like reverse Tron.
A reverse Tron, aye. If my memory serves, he's commenting on the Friday, turns up on the Saturday. I'm like, good effort.
He's got a name. He's got a namesake here in Devonport and on Auckland as well. My local, there's a pub called the Patriot, which is kind of a I suppose a British bar. It sells Guinness and stuff like that. So it's my local. And there's a couple of times I went in and they were like, "Oh, Ian, I've got a tab." I was like, "Do you mean I've got a tab?" And they list this tab that I had. I was like, "I don't drink that and I don't eat this pie." Anyway, she's like, "Your name's Ian Roy." your name's Ian Roy, isn't it? I said, "No, my name's Ian Conroy." So I was getting this. There's a guy in my village called Ian Roy. So Ian Roy, you have a namesake in Devonport and in Auckland.
I would have abused that. I would have been well in there.
I don't eat that
I think
pie.
I'd paid it a couple of times. Just it was like maybe the odd pint. To thinking, oh, maybe I'd had a couple and just paid it, without asking. And then this one day, I was like, what's on it?
Aye.
Steak and Guinness pie and
the quote I'm taking from that is, I don't eat that pie. That's brilliant. I'm going to start with you, Quinny, because I know that this morning you've been poring over and analysing the game, all 120 minutes plus the penalties of that game. And by the way, I've just got to point out, big shout out to Martin Murphy, who gave me a wee start this morning. It's the third time Aberdeen have stopped us from winning a treble. They did so in 1969-70 and also in 1976-77. I remember talking about that 1977 one in detail with Andy Lynch. We were robbed that day by Aberdeen, by the referee actually. But at the weekend, even though the refs are just their usual, Quinny, I'm not blaming any of that nonsense. I'm blaming us. I'm blaming us for our approach, our performance, the lack of energy, the poor substitutions. There are margins, of course, which we'll get into. We win that game 1-0. We don't learn anything, do we? And I think that after a result like that, as horrendous as it is, and it is horrendous, and this is why, coming home from Glasgow saying to my missus, this is why I don't understand anybody who can support more than one team, because I don't care enough about anybody else's results where it would actually affect my mood. But when it's Celtic, it completely ruins your day, your weekend, your week, your pre-season, the whole shebang. So you've had a look at that this morning, Quinny. What's your take on it now that the dust has settled? Now we're sitting here on Monday afternoon having 48 hours or so to come to terms with the fact that it's not the 6th treble in 9 years. It's not our 9th treble. It's none of these things. It's a defeat, and we walk away with our tails between our legs.
Yeah, I think a lot of the chat, I think everyone's kind of on the same page with what we've seen on the pitch in terms of like endeavour and all the rest of it. But like for me, it the game's kind of won and lost on that kind of Groundhog Day vibe it all kind of had. Like it just felt very samey. Like we hadn't learned lessons from other games where we'd changed up the team, particularly midfielders, where I've put a lot of focus and energy in terms of the game and whatever. Looking back at it, just not being cutting enough. Like the middle of the pitch was just never our own. And like honestly, it's one of the I've been quite giving in praise for Brendan this year in terms of game management, squad management all the way through the year. But that triple sub at the 65th minute or something was premature, to be kind. You know, it just felt like later on in the game, that's really what stung us, because the number one thing you'd give Aberdeen credit for is their game plan, their game management. You know, their subs evolved them through the game, really allowed them to kind of turn the screw a bit more and kind of up the ante as we kind of predictably nerfed our team as the game went on through substitutions, you know. So it just felt quite pedestrian, I'd probably say, in that sense. It was just turn up, Groundhog Day. Oh, we're 1-0 up before half time. All right, okay, cool. Yang, Forrest, go get your shinnies on you go. And then, yeah, it's such fine margins in a cup final. If you don't look after it well enough, they'll come back and bite you. And it's kind of the way it went.
You know, you're talking there about the sameness, the Groundhog Day, the predictability of it. And we were talking last week about how, you know what, if you're predictable, that's fine, because other teams still has to work you out and be able to have the class and the quality to go toe-to-toe with you, because you can be predictable and brilliant. But the problem at the weekend, Kev, we were predictable and we were flat. The energy wasn't there. We were predictable and we missed a couple of gilt-edged chances. We were predictable and our goalkeeper made a really bad error, which we probably wouldn't have expected. So you put all that into the mix, and that results in you not being able to find a winner, particularly from the substitutes that we'll look at as well, Quinny. But we are a predictable side. I don't have an issue with that if we do it well. I don't have an issue with that if we're so predictable and the manager goes into the game, the opposition manager knows what we're going to do, but we blow them away anyway. But we've not really been doing that. And Jimmy Talleen could have just ripped up the entire season and focused his entire game plan on that game against St Mirren on Trophy Day. Because not only we're predictable in the style of play, predictable in the starting 11. You know, we've basically said this is how we're going to play. And if you're a good enough manager, you can work it out. We weren't great. Aberdeen weren't great. Absolutely not. But you know what? There was definitely a spark and there was an energy missing. Kev, did you get that vibe yourself at the game?
Aye, I got that vibe right away for the morning. Speaking to other Celtic fans, truthfully, and as one of them says to me, he says, we haven't played well for months here. This is a 50-50 game. And I went, right. I've seen Celtic find ways to lose games over my years of watching football. And Saturday was the first game that we've ever lost because it was far too easy. It was far too easy to play against Aberdeen. Aberdeen deserve no credit whatsoever. No credit whatsoever. Kasper Schmeichel cost us our cup. That's it. Bottom line. That was the moment we lost the cup final when Schmeichel threw that ball into the back of the net. We bored ourselves to defeat. We really bored ourselves to defeat. It was after about 75 minutes. I was standing here going, this reminds me of the 2005 cup final. This game, there's nothing absolutely happening in this game whatsoever. This game is just petering out. Aberdeen are sitting there going, we'll take the 1-0 defeat, no problem. Celtic are going, we'll take the 1-0 victory, no problem. Until Schmeichel chucks that ball into the back of the net. Right, and that completely changes it. Then you get to the penalty kick shoot and Aberdeen realise Schmeichel can't dive to his right-hand side. And we're done for that point. It sums up our last 3 months of the season. Pointless, boring, pointless, bland. And that's it. First 7 months we were great. We won 2 trophies in the first 7 months. Got done really, really well in Europe. But the last 3 months we've been on the beach. And that's down to the players and it's down to the manager. And that team lacks a personality. And it's the way that we play. We lack a personality. And I was thinking about this over the last couple of weeks, the way we've sort of petered out and wound down. And I'm going, truthfully, really, really truthfully, whoever goes in the summer, I'm not really going to miss them because we have been that bland over the last 3 months. And there's a personally a personality and an attitude problem there that the manager hasn't sorted as well. Well,
you know, looking at the game, Ian, and the fact that obviously Kevin's touched on the fact that Schmeichel makes that error. And then obviously he's coming back from an injury that, you know, when it first happened, we were getting told it could have been a season-ending injury. It might not have come back until kind of August, September time and all this kind of stuff. But it comes back. And we've had that conversation. This is not with hindsight. We've had that conversation. What if Schmeichel's fit for the final? Does Sinisalo step aside? Because Sinisalo had come in and done pretty well. We then spoke to Alan Morris. He says, yeah, on paper, if you're looking for goals conceded, etc., yeah, but he's nowhere near the impact of a Kasper Schmeichel. So when Schmeichel's fit, you bring him back in, and that's exactly what Brendan Rodgers did. But even with an injury, even if he's still got a niggling pain or a bit of a movement issue with his arm, let's say, Ian, you don't expect to happen what actually did happen almost in the dying embers of the game. I know there was still a few minutes left. It was 83 minutes on the clock. But that is so uncharacteristic of Kasper Schmeichel and what we've seen. So after the game, I'm looking at that and I'm saying, right, I'm finding it hard to really go in hard on Kasper Schmeichel. I'm finding it difficult to go in hard on Callum McGregor for missing a penalty, because these guys have given so much this season. They're the reason we were dreaming about a treble. These two players and a few others, right? They're the reason. So it's difficult to have a personal attack on them. But what I'm seeing after the game is, we should never have dropped Sinisalo. I think that's the benefit of hindsight, Ian. I don't remember anybody having an issue when that team line was read out and Schmeichel was in goals, Ian. I just think that it's easy after the event to say that's what we did wrong. Schmeichel was our number one. We never ever see that happening. We never see that error happening with Kasper Schmeichel. Please correct me in the comment section if I'm wrong. He's made some massive saves for us this season, to the point where I'm actually, and I'm going to stick my neck on the line and say he's been our best signing of the season. In terms of his performances this season, I don't think we've had a better signing than Kasper Schmeichel. We've all gone on about him being an upgrade on Joe Hart, etc. So all these wee margins, we weren't good enough, absolutely. And what Kev says there, I think we do need a refresh. I'm not buying into there being a rebuild, absolutely not. We were on the cusp of winning a treble. It's not a rebuild, it's a refresh. But the refresh has to be about quality, Ian. We cannot go into the transfer window in this summer thinking about, we might just scrape through into the Champions League. We need to go in with the same plan that we would have had if we had won the treble. We can't make this can't allow us to change our mind in terms of our approach. And I'm hoping the board are completely behind Brendan on that one. What was your thoughts on Kasper Schmeichel? It does feel pretty difficult as a Celtic fan to blame him. I mean, it was an error, but they're few and far between, aren't they?
They really are. And, I think we spoke on the pod some weeks ago about, again, it's just as you said, do we bring Sinisalo back, or do we keep Sinisalo in the team, or do we bring Kasper back? And for me, it was a toss of a coin. Harsh on Sinisalo, but, we're bringing back our number one, and also as well, I kind of sort of console myself with the fact that Kasper's not going to be around forever. It's, I think it was Liam Carrigan actually said, Sinisalo will be around for the next 10 years or whatever. So, give Kasper his maybe sort of swan song in a cup final. Maybe we've got another season with him, I don't know. But for me, as a Celtic fan, and Brendan said this when he first came back, about, that holy trinity with the fans, the players and the board. And we win together and we lose together. We've done really, really well. And Kev, you're right. We were like a steam train or a bullet train for the first 7 months, and it has tapered off. But everything you're saying, Paul, really is kind of mirroring what Brendan's been saying, really, about the refreshment of the team. Teams go in cycles. I think he said it was a three-year cycle. You either change the manager or you change some of the personnel. I put a message on the group chat earlier on about my thoughts about it, and kind of I said I don't think it's Brendan's fault, or largely not wholly. I do think that we're hamstrung with this kind of bloody-minded approach, really, of not having a variance in our play. We did it in Europe. Ange Postecoglou did it in Europe, and he was obviously steadfast in his one way, and that's it. It's not. It's nothing against anyone if we feel that we've got to change our plan of attack in terms of playing teams from our own league, and it was kind of I kind of thought it myself, in terms of all Aberdeen had to go and do was we played them and stuffed them the week before, and then we had that result against St Mirren, and St Mirren obviously Robinson's he's a good tactician when it comes to sort of nullification. He's done it in the past a few times. So all the ingredients were there for Aberdeen to sort of adopt. And I'm sure, look, Brendan's a far bright guy that I am in terms when it comes to football coaching. So I'm not going to sort of sit there and pretend that I know all about it. But I've got my own eye test, and it was kind of it was kind of predictable really that was going to happen. I would have thought we might have had a bit of variance, maybe gone a bit longer with the substitutions. Maybe had 2 up top, caused a bit of disruption. Just something that was just out of the norm, and it's a cup final as well. And I was thinking of an analogy before about it's almost like with the complaints against the team and sort of we won a double rather than a treble. It's like someone's just given us a Ferrari, but then they're apologising because they didn't leave us with a full tank of petrol. We're kind of a bit spoiled. Some of us, and I'm from an older generation, so I like to. I think that I'm not going to jump over the bandwagon. That you see a lot of. I mean, I've listened to the sort of the radio phone-ins and some of the comments and stuff, and I think people say things in anger. But I think the whole day,
absolutely,
they would say the same thing, really. But like I say, I'm thinking glass half full. Maybe it's easier for me because I'm other side of the world. When I'm back in Glasgow, maybe I'm much more emotionally involved. I don't know. I can only sort of surmise. I don't feel anger. I feel thankful of where we are. I can see clearly, as you guys around the table are saying about a refreshment is needed, but that's nothing that Brendan hasn't already said. So we've got the right man at the helm. I'm still steadfast in thinking of wanting Brendan to extend his stay and build a dynasty. But and I believe he can do that, but he needs to be backed. He needs to be backed, and he needs to have people behind the scenes who can go out and identify these players that we need of quality. A la Engels, and I do think Engels is a top quality player, and he's got much more to come. That kind of caliber of player that's going to come straight into the first team, and maybe the players that are sitting there now, the better players in the team, maybe strengthen our bench. But we need some kind of refresh. We're not that far away, I don't think.
No, the thing is, we all touch on recruitment because what I've already said today is that nothing should change. That this plan should have already been set in stone, and it continues come the summer. But going back to the predictability aspect of it, Quinny, you're a guy that I think analyses football in terms of shape and tactics, formations, this kind of thing. We speak about it quite a lot on here. What was your take on it, Quinny? Because watching the game, even 1-0 up, you're watching it going, it's almost like kind of going through the motions, and you've got we know what we're going to get from Brendan Rodgers. It's his style of play. There's going to be a lot of passes. One of the most successful passers of the ball in world football, apparently. I seen a stat last week on that one. That's what we do. And Brendan, during the season, said to us, you're going to have to be patient as a fan base. We're looking for the point of attack. And I think we're all like, okay, you're the gaffer. You know what's right. You see these guys day in, day out. You've got a game plan. But when that's happening and it's gone from side to side and it's the horseshoe of death and all this kind of stuff, that's when sometimes, and I've mentioned a thing that I watched a couple of weeks back about Alex Ferguson. He was being interviewed by Gary Neville. He says sometimes you can plan all week for a game, but if you're not being able to pick that lock, create chaos. And that's what I think Ian was talking about there, because the minute you start talking about 2 up top, people think you're a dinosaur. Nobody plays 2 up top. Exactly. They're not prepared for it. Do something a wee bit different. And by the way, looking at the bench, there wasn't a great deal of options on there. Obviously, I think our 2 most creative players are injured at the moment. I don't think that would be a revelation for anybody. So you're looking at the bench and you're thinking there's not a great deal of creativity on there. But at that point, Quinny, when you're looking at it, and as you say, a bit surprised that the substitutions have mainly happened, because even though it was a kind of drab game, I'm not thinking we're going to lose it. I'm not thinking we're going to give up the lead when we make the substitutes. And that's no hindsight. That's watching the game as it happened and as it unfolded. What did you think yourself to try and refresh it in game? What did you think we should have done differently?
Well, I think it was a kind of foregone conclusion in some ways in terms of how the play was going to unfold when it was Bernardo, McGregor and Engels back together again. Because if you look at, I think it was the Hibs game and the St Mirren game, that was the midfield that he went for. There is like, I kind of said in my breakdown on Celtic here, no Rio, no party is kind of the way it felt in midfield. You've not got that guy that will just run between the lines and take everything on the half turn. Bernardo and Engels are both quite good at similar things in some ways, but neither one of them are that type of guy. And you mentioned when you were thrown to Ian there about like Casper and McGregor or whatever, I kind of went after both of them for the opposite thing. Like McGregor for me, like throughout the 120 minutes, like did not lead that team, didn't like grab the game by the scruff of the neck. Like we watch Celtic once or twice a week whenever they're playing. And I can tell you, Paulo Bernardo is not going to be that guy that is going to break into the box and make things happen. We can all see Arnie Engels as an attacking midfielder. And when he's got that on the pitch, like, there has to be moments in the game. We know how good McGregor is at breaking the lines. We see it for Celtic. We see it for Scotland. We've seen it all the way through his career. And he just stayed in position the whole game of, like, protect the back four, move the ball from left to right. And there was no, like, 5 minutes of just rule breaking and just doing something a little bit different where, Bernardo, you sit in the pocket. I'm going to go up here for 10 minutes and try and make something happen. And that could have been, and you know, it's kind of hard to totally, like, go after that, because we were in the second half 1-0 up for a large period of it, and you do need to balance that kind of risk and reward element of it. But it's still a cup final, and, you know, like the St Johnstone game, you know, I heard the commentators mentioning we got our first goal about the same time as we did at the weekend there, and we went on and scored a bucket, but we didn't have the ability to get the shots away because everything was just very safe and kind of laid back or whatever. So I thought McKeown was like a must start in this one, not because of like he's better than anyone else or whatever, but he is like a connector, you know, through the middle. He'll take a guy in the pocket and try and like play a pass off the side of it or whatever. So I wasn't surprised that McKeown kind of came on when he did, but I did think removing Engels was a big problem when he was removed as well, because for everyone who talks about Engels, I think we can all agree one of his top 3 qualities is a long-range pass on the air or on the deck. And as the game started to open up in the second half, Aberdeen start to go forward chasing the goal and more spacious comes open. You want a guy like Bernardo that can slice the ball into the channel, that can clip one over the top and do whatever. But we've taken him off and we've kept Bernardo on, who's like a 5-10 yard passer, you know. So we've then added that energy into the middle with McKeown, and the pitch gets bigger, but we've then not got anyone that can actually, you know, make those spaces work for us on the ball. So, and with Casper, like, and again, like, I'm not a goalkeeper expert or anything like that. And we've mentioned injury, and it feels like everyone's kind of like a hindsight doctor with this one. I'm certainly one of them as well. But if you look at the penalties as well as the own goal, Casper didn't want to dive on his right hand side. You know, the first like 3 penalty, he went the same way every time, and it was a nice dive. He got nice height, nice shape, and all that. And the one penalty he goes the other direction for, it's not the same form, you know, or anything like that. So, you know, if you're Casper, if you're a goalkeeper coach, I would not be surprised if it came out the Aberdeen coach said top left every time, because he's no catching it with that shoulder injury, 3 weeks old or whatever. So that's the only thing, is like, should there have been a wee bit more of, if that is the case, and it's a lot of, you know, you're kind of reading between the lines or whatever, a wee bit more of like, put the team before yourself, because penalties in a cup final is something to think about. And if you've got a guy that can't dive to one side, then, you know, from open play from penalties, it will show itself.
No, spot on. I mean, and these are the things that we are watching. Kev made the observation before with regards to Schmeichel at the penalties. If he's not 100% and you've played him and you've taken that risk, then when penalties are on the horizon, you know, you've got to keep that in mind as well, because, as you say, these things are studied. I've listened to goalkeepers being interviewed about this, Quinny, and they're sitting there on their laptop watching every penalty that I go, you know, and every penalty that a penalty taker's taken, and they're putting all the hours into the research prior to a big game that might go into penalties. I'm really keen to bring those in the chat into the conversation as well. This show's all about you and what you're feeling and what you're thinking as well. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I mean, there's a lot of, I think what happens as well, going into the game, and I said it all week last week, and on the morning of the game, I felt the exact same. I did not see a 4-5-6-0 game. I really didn't. Loads of reasons for that. The main one, my prediction was 2-1, and at 1 each. I'm actually saying to Big Ewan Martin, who was at Bad with us on Saturday, I'm turning to Ewan saying, right, it's Johnny Kerry, it's his day. It's still going to happen. We're still going to win 2-1. And the reason I felt it was going to be a tight game is because there is a predictability about us, but also you've got to turn it. Sometimes we don't do this enough. Let's put yourself into Jimmy Thielen's shoes. If it was a 4-5-6, he's getting sacked. He's losing his job, because they've ended that season with knout. You know, after such a promising start, that could have really been the final nail in his coffin. So you're thinking to yourself, if he plays against what we think is fast-flowing football, and he plays anti-football, he couldn't care less as long as he gets a result. You know, Ange Postecoglou's team didn't play the fast-flowing football that we thought was his trademark at Celtic to win a Europa League, but he did it. You know, he did it just to win the game. And I think that we're going into this game, there was a lot riding on it for the opposition. We are so focused on winning a treble and how Celtic are going to line up. But the way they were going to play was always going to nullify us, you know. And they did. They did for a spell. But as you say, Quinny, you know, we should be able to pick that lock. That's our job. We should be able to do that. Ted, Ben, you're in. Rodgers will be given a whack of money to splatter in the summer. I'm going to pick up on that then, because that takes us into the recruitment aspect of it. And I'm not singling out Liam Scales, because, you know, I've seen that happen. He's an easy target. We've got a short leash with him. Let's go for Scales. Let's go for Taylor. Let's go for Engels. Let's go for Ida. These are the guys that seem to get it. But we've tried to fill that position so many times since Brendan Rodgers came in. You look at the amount of, you know, left-sided centre-halves that we have signed, right? We signed Nat Phillips. We signed Gustav Lagerberg. We signed Austin Trusty. Yet, we go into that game on Saturday, and Liam Scales is still the best option. Right? You might not think he's the right option. He's still the best option that we've got at the football club. So you've got to ask yourself, what is happening with the recruitment there? You might look at Greg Taylor, and maybe it's his last game that he'll ever play for Celtic. He gets it in the neck. But we've tried to replace him. We brought in Alex Bailly. We brought in Jeffrey Schlupp. We've tried to replace him, yet Greg Taylor was still the best option on Saturday. So we go into the summer transfer window, Kev, and you think to yourself, right, yeah, we do. You might disagree with me, think it's a rebuild. I think it's a refresh. But what's for sure is we've got to get it right in the transfers. Are you confident that we will, Kev, based on the players that have come in? Because what we were saying last week, Brendan Rodgers has transformed players, but they're players who were already at the football club. He's transformed Liam Scales, turned him into a first-team footballer. He's transformed Dyson Maid into an incredible goal scorer. He has done that. You know, Rio Atati started to show the kind of form where you're maybe looking at that going, Rodgers has transformed this player. He's tapped into him. He's got the consistency out of him. But the signings, that's another thing. That's another discussion entirely. And I'm not writing them off, but it's not as though they've come in and they've all hit the ground running and you're thinking they're all starters. So going into the recruitment, going into the transfer window, Kev, will we chuck a pile of money at
it? One thing about Saturday, I'll just go back to it. There's part of me glad, and this is maybe going to sound a wee bit strange, but there's part of me glad that it was Michael, McGregor and Alistair Johnson that made the mistakes, because us as a support would have been unbearable if it was Liam Scales that missed a penalty. Would have been unbearable if it was Yang that had missed a penalty. The three guys who made the mistakes, it cost us a cup final. Basically, I've got enough credit in the bank that we're going, well, it's just, we didn't
made men.
Yeah, they're made men. Yeah.
That's it. It's fine. Like,
then they start on the references, because Ian loves a casino or a Goodfellas reference, right?
So I would like to say that with regards to the transfer window, this transfer window coming up, it was quite funny. I like when I get to this point of year, because I can switch off. You switch off, and I will switch off for the majority of the summer, because basically I know for a fact that Celtic will not do anything in the transfer market to at least the middle of August. We will do nothing. We will wait to see what's going to happen. We'll wait to see who will sell. Then we'll decide, right, we better go and buy somebody. The news that came out last night that they're looking to talk to Schlupp, I'm going, nothing's going to change. Right away, that big guy should be getting hunted for your club. Hunted. Who should be going to go? Your performances in the last couple of weeks have been absolutely ridiculous, mate. You're not interested in why. If we're offering Schlupp a contract or talking to them, that means that they're maybe just trying to cover what might happen with Greg Taylor. We'll do nothing to August, and there'll be guys in that boardroom will not trust Rodgers with the money, and they'll point quite rightly out to the signings that he's made. The fact is, a free signing, and as Castor Schmeichel was quite clearly your best signing last summer. I agree with Paul there, but I'm not going to get too excited. I might not even get excited in August, because we will not do anything until August, until we sell a couple of players, see how much money we've got. Then we'll try. We'll get linked with a few guys, because that's what we do. We chuck out the wee feeler of these boys and go, we're interested, and we'll hang on and try to win the deal. That's what we'll do. But again, I'm having a look at it at the week. I'm more worried. The guys that we've signed are good players, but whether they fit the way Rodgers wants us to play is the big worry for me. It's not a worry, but it's the big question mark for me. I have a look at Engels, and truthfully, at this precise moment in time, if Atalanta give us double our money, I would bite your hand off for it, because he's in the wrong movie. We've signed a midfielder that doesn't fit the way that we want to play. That's the way it looks to me now. That's the real way it looks to me now. And if we're going to double our money there, I would bite your hand off for it, for the sake of the land.
I've said this before, but if we sell him for 20, does that mean he's worth 11 then, aye? Because all I've been hearing all season, he's not worth £11 million. Kev, I get what you're saying there. Maybe it's like the Titanic turning. It takes a while for players to then tap into what Brendan's telling them. Rio Atati, Brendan Rodgers spoke about the fact that it took a while for him to get into his head, I think it is that he said. And I'm looking at the Engels situation, and I'm kind of half hoping that that's the case as well. And it's maybe just a bit of both. We can maybe change slightly to suit him, or he needs to buy in 100% into the game plan. But again, the thing with Schlupp did come as a surprise to me, and I'm hoping it's a wide of the mark kind of report that we're going for Schlupp, because
could be his agent, could just be his agent, just firing it out there, but
could well be. The thing with Schlupp is that ball doesn't hit the bar, and he's the hero. He's the Doumbé of today.
He's a Doumbé. That's exactly what it was when he hit the bar as well. That was his Doumbé moment.
That was, aye. Quinny.
I said that in my breakdown, but I didn't think it was Doumbé. I thought it was like, what was the guy's name? El Kaduri or something. Did he not score a final goal? Or was it just Doumbé?
Kaduri scored against Rangers. He scored against Rangers. Yes, that's why he's up there. He did. He came in and it was a strange one. Came in short-term loan deal and scores against Rangers.
That was another dreadful cup final. That was a late goal Doumbé scored, and Neil Lennon's last game, and Gordon Stratton took him off.
He wasn't happy. Lenny was not happy. Absolutely. And Doumbé has gone on record to blame Strachan for the demise of his career. The only player up until that time ever to have 2 hyphens in his name. There you go. There's one for the statos. When we're talking about recruitment, though, and you see the likes of Kieran Tierney scoring his farewell goal for Arsenal, Ian, and you think to yourself, wow, what a signing he would be. What a signing Kasper Schmeichel would be. There's a trend developing in that these are guys that are known to Brendan. And this is my concern. We need to have a much better recruitment strategy whereby, and by the way, I hear that Paul Tisdale gave a presentation at the Fans Forum either last week or the week before, but obviously to the wider audience, like Quinny, you weren't aware of that, the wider audience is unaware of it. And this is
what type of hat did he have on? Anybody in the comments tell us what kind of hat he was wearing?
Freddy Krueger style. Aye. It's all fault. Aye, he pilfered the wardrobe of Brendan Rodgers. Apparently, he's good pals with Paul Smith, so maybe it was a Paul Smith one. But it's like, why not share that? Because we're all just guessing here in relation to what is your strategy. We know what the business side of it is. I'll bring them in nice and cheap, sell them on for a profit. We get all that side of it. But in terms of going into the transfer window at the moment, Ian, yes, we've lost the treble, but let's not forget, in terms of the European progress we've been talking about all season, how to build on that. Jungle Lion comes in to remind us that actually we are seeded, which is a big positive going into next season's qualifier. We're going to be seeded for the qualifier. Brilliant. We're going to avoid. Yeah, I know. We all tuned in. We're all big fans of Riker last night. And when we go into these games, they're not going to be easy anyway. But you're avoiding some really, really tricky ties. And it would just be great. We don't want absolutely everything to be unearthed, Ian, but at the moment, it's a bit of a scattergun approach. I mean, Brendan Rodgers comes in with saying 9 guys from all over the place. There doesn't seem to be a plan. And I've said before, you don't sign 9 players after winning a treble. That's nonsense. That's like rebuild after a treble. Absolute nonsense approach. Then we're a lot safer, and players are filtering out, and much fewer players are coming into the football club. But January for me, this is where I'm going here. January past is what we should have been doing then, looking ahead to the Champions League. Why on earth are we going into the summer transfer window again? And it's almost like I always go on about Gromit being on that train track and putting the train track down as he's actually hurtling through the living room. That's what it feels like, Ian. Where's the planning? Why are we leaving it to the last minute again? Like Kev says, we undoubtedly will. Even if we got their business done early in the summer, Kev, it's still too late. The business needs to be done in January. The players need to be bedded in. Yeah, they need to be bedded in. And that's a big frustration for me, Ian, because until that kind of happens and you get into that mode of bringing players in and you're not expecting them to hit the ground running, because a lot of them don't. This is the thing. We could bring in 3 or 4 players. I'm thinking 4 if no one leaves. If you lose 1 or 2, you're going to have to replace them as well. But you're expecting them all to perform straight off the bat. Engels has been getting stick all season because he's in and out of it. He's playing well. He's inconsistent. And he's got a massive price tag on his head. Next season is maybe where we should expect him to flourish. But, you know, we're going into a Champions League qualifier and the guys that should have been in place should have came in January. It's bad planning, Ian. But I feel like I'm repeating myself. This happens all the time with us, doesn't it?
It does. And I've been quite vocal about it over the past couple of seasons, really, about the board's approach to the signing policy. It's kind of leave it late, try and do it on the cheap. That's why we ended up paying 9 million for Eder, as we know. There's no real plan, it seems. But the thing is, look, we just lost. We were expected to beat Aberdeen and comfortably, and we didn't. Well, we're going into the Champions League qualifier, which is in itself ridiculous when, you know, the English Premier or next door neighbours, they've got 6, including Tottenham, who won the Europa League. They've got 6 teams in the Champions League, and we've got to qualify, and we're the winners of our league. You know, it's all about the filthy lucre. But, you know, stranger things have happened. We've lost qualifiers before. And so it's not a foregone conclusion that we're going to go and actually qualify. And of course, the board will not, they won't tool up before that. They'll probably see it as a minor hurdle to get over before we get into the Champions League proper. So, you know, and then look to sort of spend money. But I don't know, in terms of Tisdale, I mean, someone, you know, you're saying what kind of hat's he wearing? I'm hoping it's a Peaky Blinders with a razor in. You know, he's going to sort anyone out who tries to get any of our players, you know. But if he doesn't sort it, it'll be a Tommy Cooper fez.
Absolutely, I love that. I love what you did with the hat references there. Brilliant. No, but that's the frustration, Quinny. And yes, we will be called spoilt brats because we're throwing the toys at the pram for no winning a treble and all the rest of it. But these are the discussion points we have all season. These are the discussion points we had in January. I mean, I remember watching the 2 games. It wasn't the away leg, unfortunately, but against Bayern Munich, and think to myself, we were just that wee bit short of quality. Kyogo. And Kyogo's name just kept coming back to me. You know, a happy Kyogo or a bloody replacement for Kyogo might have been the difference. But someone somewhere at the football club. And then you're hit with all the cliches of the day. Oh, it's always difficult doing business in January. If you want your player, you get your player. You know, if you want them, you get them. Simple as that, Quinny. I keep hearing about Matthias Fitzgerald. How many transfer windows do we need to hear about him before we actually bring the boy in? If that's the boy we want, because by the time we sign him, you're talking double the price that when we were first interested in him, Quinny. There's a lackluster approach to it. There's a kind of like, I was told when questioned with somebody within the football club, what do you know about recruitment, Paul? What do you know about recruitment? Well, I know that you don't go in against Bayern Munich 1 striker down. I don't have to be a recruitment specialist to know that, Quinny. I know that when I looked at the bench at the weekend there, where things weren't going to plan, there wasn't enough creativity on the bench. I know that a team like Celtic should be able to suck up 2 injuries, but we can't because we're too thin on the ground. And that comes back to recruitment, poor squad management as well. We've got to say, I like the fact that Rodgers doesn't want to have 30-odd players in his first team squad. I get it. I understand that. Guardiola said the same last week. But we've ran on empty a wee bit. We've been running on fumes a bit, Quinny. We can't allow that to happen.
No, I mean, I make you quite right. I think, you know, I said that, I think I was listening to Tino's live stream yesterday, and I was saying that in their chat, but, you know, not replacing Kyogo is cost us not getting by Bayern. Because I think we could all agree, if we had another striker there, we'd have had maybe a wee bit more of a push across those games to maybe do it a little bit better, and that would have been beyond amazing, obviously, progressing, knocking a team like that out. But it also probably means we win that treble as well. I think a big part of the friction Brendan's maybe coming up against in terms of like doing the business is all the stuff we're chatting about now is stuff that we know Celtic to do over the years. You know, leave it late, do it on the cheap, wait for dominoes to fall elsewhere and someone becomes loose and available. And we've seen under Dominic Mackay that it doesn't need to be that way. We've seen under Ange Postecoglou, it doesn't need to be that way. And Brendan has maybe pushed the boundaries a bit last summer by getting Ida done regardless of price, Engels done regardless of price, because they were maybe like top of the hit list or the wish list or whatever. But there was rumours and there was chat that came out that because of the actual spend in January, it tied his hands the actual spend in the summer tied his hands a bit in January for that Kyogo replacement. Whereas maybe it might have been a bit easier if we'd done our business maybe more economically. But I do think like part of the struggle Brendan's maybe had, that's that transfer window or the transfer windows we've had this season that hopefully doesn't repeat itself again next time is justifying spending the amount of money for the quality of player. Because again, like I think most people on the face of it see Trusty for 6 million and think, oh, that should be better on scales. And, you know, maybe Rodgers was pushing for a guy that was 8 million or 7 million and the club were like, nah, 6 million will do, you know, for this one. That should get us by on that one. And it's still that kind of balancing of compromising and trying to spread the butter right across the toast as thinly as they can. So hopefully, like, we did get that feeling in the Bayern Munich game because Desmond and all that were in the stadium that Brendan should have the ability to turn around to them and go, give me the fucking money, you know, because we were that close with just a little bit off. And if we did push the boat out in January, it could have been so much different on so many different levels. So I do hope it's different. And because of the qualifier, like the number one thing I'd love, this Paul Tisdale revelation I've just been you've just told me that he was, why is that not on the YouTube channel? Why is that not even a Twitter post or something? A couple of snippets of it, you know.
This is the thing, right? He's a guy who seems to be a bit of a caricature with the clothing. We've had a dig at him for that. All jocular, obviously, but actually there is an opportunity, Quinny. There's an opportunity to say, right, we've not heard for this fella. We don't know what the plan is. Let us know. And he's standing there giving a presentation, right, on the big screen to whoever knows how to go and join the fans forum. Apparently there's a hidden link somewhere on the deep web. And it's one of these ones where even if you find that hidden link, it tells you that the next fans forum's in February, probably 2021. But it does happen regularly, apparently. You can get onto a mailing list. Apparently Kev Graham is banned from them, apparently, since the last time he told him to take a look at the window.
I've had email. I had email back a new application, and they've never responded to me. So make it up what you will.
Oh, it filtered into the spam, Kev. Honest, Gulf. No, but these are the things, Quinny. What an opportunity to actually share that with us.
Big time. So I was going to say, in Spain, at the end of transfer windows, sporting directors normally do. It looks like a manager press conference, but it's just like them saying, "Oh, we went after this guy, but we missed out, and we managed to get this deal done. We're really happy." And they just kind of like flesh it out. And kind of in Spain, Italy, and Germany, you hear from these people as often as the managers, almost, especially in transfer season. So the fact that he's got stuff like that to share with fans, and it's still like this isn't like war or like some sort of like, you know, we're not like a company that's got patents on some sort of special technology or products or whatever. Football teams and transfer, you know, like if we say we're interested in Matthias Kvitsgaard, it's not as if everyone around the world is going to stop what they're doing and go, we need to get by this guy before Celtic does. You know, that's not the way things work for the most part. Then it's just wrapped up and hidden so much that these guys then get, you know, a bit more flack, you know. The
thing is, though, Quinny, if Celtic came out and said, we're interested in that guy, or that's Svitsgaard and the boy from Brøndby, Eintracht Frankfurt go, now that's fine, they'll only try to sign him in the last week of the window anyway, we've got plenty of time. They'll only move, because they didn't need to, because the way that we work.
Nah, you're right. And this is sometimes the frustration, Kev. It would be good to see what the strategy is. We know the business side.
To apply some pressure to Mr. Tisdale.
Well, I mean, there could be that as well. But I think, you know, leading into the game, looking at the furore around tifos, etc. for Trophy Day, and obviously some of the banners making their way into the ground and being on display. You've seen the brilliant banner at James A. Forest, which obviously would have been planned as a magnificent tifo, and it would have been a great tribute to the man. We also seen Michael Nicholson appearing on a target sign. And this is what happens when people don't talk, Kev. The lack of communication is deafening. And now sometimes people say, "Oh, look at you want to sack the board again because you lost the game of football." No, we've been saying this all season. He's the chief.
Maybe that's how I've ended up in the spare room.
Possibly, aye. He's the CEO.
When to communicate.
And there's poor communication. There really is poor communication, guys. I don't expect them to check everything out with fan media or season ticket holders or whatever, but there needs to be some form of communication, because I think what that then does, Kev, is it gives you a wee bit of confidence that there's leadership there. Because at the moment, we're not quite sure what their aspirations are. We're not quite sure what we plan to do in the transfer window. We're not quite sure what happened with Kyogo. We can only guess, and why we didn't replace him. We're just clutching at straws otherwise, aren't we?
We're clutching at straws, and selling Kyogo without having another striker to come in was an absolute mistake. We thought we had got away with it because Dyson carried us through at that point. We went, yes, we didn't need one, we've got Dyson, but then over the last couple of weeks, for whatever reason, Dyson's forms fell off a cliff and he couldn't bail us out on Saturday either. Look, we didn't want to know what Paul Disdale and the scouting team are having for breakfast. We didn't want to know where they are at every single hour of the day. We just want to know that, well, we're looking at this level of player. This is a market. So not even the markets we're looking for this level of player. Just a wee bit of what the 5-year plan is.
Yeah.
I mean, when that fan survey, we still haven't actually seen the results of the fan survey. Have we actually ever seen the results of the review that Gordon Stratton done?
No, we haven't. And we never knew what happened after the investigation during the COVID season, the internal investigation. We never ever got fed back. That's 3 different big topics, Kev. And there's been no feedback on either of the 3 of them. We found out that Gordon Strachan won through Gordon Strachan at one of our nights. He opened up. He was asked a question about youth development, and he opened up about it, and he tapped into the fact that he had done this research whilst working on a consultancy basis for Celtic.
But I'm right in saying, you can shoot me down here, Paul, if I'm actually wrong, that Gordon Stratton says that he recommended somebody like Tisdale be appointed. That was part of his review, eh?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't name him, but you're right. He basically hinted at the fact that some of the positions, i.e. Tisdale's position, Darren O'Day's position, were all part of his review. And they were some of the recommendations, and he was happy to see that.
But that was 4 years ago.
Yeah, well, that was a while back. And then it seems as though, certainly in O'Day's case, the right man's not in there because he's going to be moving on as well. But these are the frustrations. And yeah, often they come out only after a defeat and a disappointment, Ian. And this is probably the only thing I can take from Saturday that I can turn into a positive. Had Schmeichel not, and he's been credited with an OG there, I've just noticed that it's the first time I've actually looked at it on a screen in terms of the actual stats of the game. Schmeichel's credited with OG. Had he not scored that OG and we win the game 1-0 and it was a flat encounter like the Doumbé final, a rubbish game, we learn nothing, Ian. We learn nothing, do we? Because we're just so elated at the fact, and we've been up at Celtic Park and we're all celebrating. We don't really learn anything from that victory, do we? So the only thing I can take from this that might be tinged with a wee bit of positivity is we analyse it with a laser focus and we say, right, quite a few things aren't actually right here. Let's make sure that we can put them right.
Well, here's a question. Would we, as fans, would we take losing the Scottish Cup final over losing the qualifier for the Champions League? I'd rather win both, but for me, I'd rather win the qualifier. And in a roundabout way, and I don't want to sound patronising to Aberdeen, it's not bad for our league that Celtic didn't win the treble, really. And the fact that it wasn't Rangers, it was Aberdeen. You know, kind of
it's tedious us winning all the time. I wasn't enjoying it whatsoever.
I don't mean that. I don't mean that in an ungrateful way.
I know. Sorry, Ian. I'm just being sarcastic.
Now that it's happened, it's come to pass. I'm trying to look at it from a sort of a positive perspective. You know, of course, I wish we'd won it. I don't get bored of winning at all. You know, but you know, again, you know, they're saying it's the year of the underdog, and a lot of the cups have been won by, you know, the non-fancied team. So, and again, if we played Aberdeen another 10 times, we'd probably win 9 or even 10 of them. Yeah. And we should have won that game, you know. And I was, you know, Dyson was through on goal and he had a shot and he could have slipped it into Jamesy. You know, there was fine margins, but you're quite right. It would have papered over the cracks. So it now gives us, and I like, you know, after Rangers beat us when Ronnie was in charge on, you know, in that game, and it was Desmond that sparked him into action. I'm not sure it's not the same level of disappointment, I suppose, or maybe it is, but maybe it just puts it in the sharper focus that we do need a little bit more surgery than we maybe they anticipated. And I hope it happens. We can all see it. But look, I'm a bit of a cheerleader for Brendan Rodgers. I love the guy. I think I think we're lucky to have him. I'd like to see him extend his stay, as I said before, but not be hamstrung like he has been in the past. I think that's why he walked the first time, by and large, because of the way our board go about their business. And they always seem to revert back to, well, look what we've given you. Look what we've given you. And it's like, but we're kind of the only show in town, really. And so we should be winning the kind of level of stuff we're winning. Go on,
see
Ken.
how you sorry, and see how you're bringing up the Ronnie and getting beat on penalties off Rangers and that. I think this is possibly different, and I agree with Paul here. What we do in the summer is not going to change for what happened on Saturday. What we do in the summer is not going to change whatsoever, because the board and other people can quite rightly go like that. By the way, when was the last time we got beat at Hampden? We're due one. That is just football. That is the way it happens. So I think the guys in the boardroom are not going to press a panic button. Nothing's going to change the way they're going to attack the summer, because it's no seismic. Us losing a cup final, first Scottish Cup final we've lost since 2002. Am I right there? I think I might be. So first time Brendan Rodgers has lost at Hampden, there's not going to be a panic button pressed. It's no embarrassing. It's just go, well, basically it was one of the days we didn't really deserve it. But if we had won it 1-0, nothing's going to change in the summer. So I agree with Paul with that point. I can't see what we were planning to do in the summer change just because we handed the game to Aberdeen.
It must be one of the most difficult things in sport, Quinny. When you become successful, that you start coasting. That must be one of the most difficult things to avoid in football or any sport. And that's when we throw about this, word mentality, but that's when the mentality comes in, isn't it? And then you get a bloody nose like we did at Saturday, and it's like, oh, well, actually, let's regroup here. Let's look at this again and make some changes that maybe we wouldn't have made before. No seismic changes, like Kev says, but some changes that it forces your hand. It makes you become a wee bit more brutal, a wee bit more ruthless.
Some of the quotes we've had from Brendan recently, in the last week or two, is around like transfers and whatever. His words are something to the tune of, as he sees it, the current squad needs 2 to 3 quality additions into it. And I'm kind of thinking similar to the policy last summer where you only bring in like 3 guys for the whole budget rather than 9 or whatever. And then he goes on to say, if we lose somebody again, similar situation, we need to replace them. So I hope whether the 2 or 3 players are, we could probably speculate on 1 or 2 of them, but there's definitely a Kyogo replacement you've got to think is in the offing, and there's got to be some sort of left back cover of some sort that's been worked on in some case, because we've been quite aware of the situation there. And I hope, I don't expect it to change anything too much, but I really do hope, because we didn't replace Kyogo in January and we've seen the kind of backfire of that, even to the extent in the final where, it's no big shakes. Like it happens in football. You can't win all the time every week. I get that. But the way that we've dropped points in the league and the way that final went, the squad clearly is missing something that it lost already. And I'm not saying Kyogo would have answered all of these problems, but even having him in and around the building, I think makes us more attacking, makes us quicker. And in any game where we've not been great post-January, there's an argument to say somebody like him would have made the situation a bit better. So I really hope that the Champions League payday that we've had this year is like crack to them, and they want to make sure that they're going to get that again, because it's going to be a bucket of money. And if we can have a similar performance again, this campaign is last. Any business, any sort of hand over fist transfer fees you need to do, it's very quickly worth it, So in terms of Tisdale and Brendan and everything that we've kind of mentioned there, the number one thing I'm looking at is the striker, because that's something that should have been, and that's why I'm really interested in this presentation thing he's done, because I'd be really interested to hear where they kind of see themselves in some ways. But if we don't have a Kyogo replacement by the time the qualifier comes around, I'm not that I'd be shocked or surprised. So I think we can all agree it's very much in form, but it would be a shock, I guess, but I'm not a shock. I don't know any other way of putting it, but I think you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I was
predictable but upsetting.
Going back to one of your points, Ian, going back to one of Ian's earlier points, I love winning trebles. I absolutely love it. Not so that I can lord it over anybody, just because that's what you want to see your team winning. Always, no matter what, you want to see your team win. And winning trebles is just, it seemed for a long part of my Celtic supporting life like it was never going to happen. And then when it happens, it's just a great feeling, and that's what you want. But if you want to be a Champions League side and you want to consistently perform like we did this season or better, you're probably going to have to give up a cup here or there. The league's always the absolute priority, because that is your gateway into this other realm of football. And I'm not even going to bring the money into it. It's just, that's where you want to be. That's the top table of European football. And that, we've got the heritage, we've got the history. That's where you want to play your football. But now and again, and probably Jim Moore's already touched on this over the piece, the realistic oracle of Acsom, you're going to have to give up a trophy here or there. That is just the way it's going to be, Kev. And, if, the normalisation of trebles, we're talking about that. Unbelievable that we won 4 in a row. It's an anomaly that we've won 4 in a row.
I think you saw on Saturday was the first time that possibly the luck just turned against us. But you're not going to get away with it this time in a cup tie. That's it. On you go. And again, that's what happens. That does what happens when you're just normalising. And as a culture in the club that we win and won. But as Quinny says, he used the word coasting, and we have been coasting for a wee while. Look, our main priority every season is to win the league, and we've done that. We had a great first 7 months, and I'm not going to chuck that out with the bathwater. I am annoyed with them now. But they're like family. You just fall out with them, and you eventually fall back in with them. You just go, right, give me a couple of days to cool down here, and I'll be all right. I will be all right.
Is that why you're in the spare room? Have you been falling out with folk again, Kev?
Myself. I've been falling out with myself. I've been arguing with myself in the kitchen.
Is that where you keep the Brendan Rodgers statue? Yeah, in there to just dust it a wee bit.
Well, I've just actually noticed now I've stuck my glasses on that we've got Captain America, Nessie, and Spider-Man behind me. I think that's the first time. I think that's the first time they've ever been on a Celtic podcast.
Great trio.
So it's a bit like when you lose cup finals in the way that we're going through it. You get all these religious folk that throw themselves in the Ganges, and they're meant to come out like revitalised, and they find themselves in that, but really you're just chunking yourself in a polluted river, and you find out it doesn't taste very nice when you get down there. That's what Saturday was like. We just, we're not refreshing ourselves. We've just jumped into the Ganges and just decided, I didn't like the taste of that, and we've now jumped out and said we didn't really want to jump back in there again. It's just a bit about finding yourself and moving on. But the problems, even if we had won on Saturday, the problems that we've got are still there, and they were still there, and they have been there for the last 3 months. And as Quinny quite rightly says, Rodgers says it a couple of times, there's boys that have been here too long, and we need to get different voices in that changing room, and that's not going to change because we lost the last game of the season. Look, it was Sarah at the time, but hey, there's not much we can do about it now.
No, but another thing there as well is the formation of a team spirit and a group of players isn't always galvanised by success. Sometimes it can be galvanised by defeat. And you look at Callum McGregor's reaction. And I remember Paul McStay, a similar reaction back in '94, against Wraith Rovers, and you think, your captain is absolutely shot to bits. What does that do to the teammates? I mean, they should be looking at what that guy puts in every single day at training, and maybe I've let him down, and then it galvanises you again in a strange kind of roundabout way. You look at the disappointment of Engels when he came off, knowing that he's not going to be able to affect positively the game, and he's put the jersey over his face and all this kind of stuff. He knows he's not had the best game, and he's not going to be able to do anything positive to change anybody's mind. So that sometimes you look at that and you think, you need to get a wee bit of that hurt to make sure that the success is sweeter. And again, it's not just trying to, it's not just a word salad here. It's how you feel as a Celtic fan after a defeat. You had that treble in your hand. You were 1 goal up, and we didn't do enough. There was a strange moment as well when we scored. I don't know if you find, I wasn't at the game. I was at Bad watching it on the big screen with loads of other Celtic fans, and we scored the goal, and it was like a delayed reaction on the park, which made me think, it's been, the flag's up, or something's happened. It's going to VAR. Did you get that vibe when we scored? It wasn't as if that just like that, spontaneous celebration. Did you feel that?
Where I was behind the goal, there was hardly a reaction because we didn't realise it was in. I was that far away that I thought the game had stopped. I thought, what's happened there? Oh, it's in. Then Vickers does a sort of half celebration. I mean, he's gave that goal.
What was the reason behind that, lads? Can anybody explain that to me? Because we felt it as well where we were watching the game.
On the commentary was kind of muted as well.
Yeah.
On the one I was watching, it was like you say, Kev, as if it was like, is it in, is it not? And it had gone in. So, but I assumed it was going to be chalked off or something because there was a few seconds delay.
I've heard a few people saying we take it for granted.
I was going to say though,
I didn't get that. I just felt the goal had been chopped off or something. That's how mine was a bit muted as well.
I think as well the fact that nobody really reacted because it was an own goal. Mm-hmm. So Carter Vickers didn't react, even if that was a striker. He knows it's an own goal and he's got the touch before that. The striker's off. The striker's off. Gone. I'm claiming that. I'm claiming that Cameron Carter Vickers didn't do it. So there was a delayed reaction even in the stadium. Mm-hmm. There was, especially with us, way up the other end behind the goals. There was a sort of delayed reaction. And there was also the reaction when Schmeichel scored the own goal as well. That the Celtic support then at that point gone, this is in the post. You could actually get that feeling in the ground. There was this is doing the post. Mm-hmm. We've been meandering here for 40-45 minutes, and now we're going to need to try and lift it, and we don't think we can actually do it. So there was a bit of that in the stadium as well. But you get that in any game. You get that wee feeling in any game. That's no entitlement. That's no nothing. That's just the feeling you get watching what you're watching. But sometimes you just know, this could no go away now.
It's energy, Kev. You can feel the energy, positive and negative, in situations like that. Sorry, Ian, I cut you off a wee bit there, mate. Were you going to say something?
No, I was just kind of touching on what you were saying before about sometimes in adversity, that's when sort of real team spirit can be forged as well as in success. But Brendan, after the game, again, I think he's always there with sort of the right phrase and kind of the right description, and he said, he made the players stay behind and applaud Aberdeen in that sportsmanlike way and show the class that he is, show the class that we hope that we aspire that Celtic Football Club is. I know Rangers, when they lost, they all sort of toddled off, along with their fans, and I think you show that humility. But he was saying, and I suppose it's the obvious thing that any manager would say, but it's like watch them lifting the trophy you thought you were going to lift, and you use that as fuel.
Yeah.
And that's all you can do. And I think, Rodgers will demand that, and so will Carmack.
Absolutely. Listen, ladies and gents, it's a form of therapy on a Monday after a weekend like that, but we don't take it for granted that you've tuned in 2,000 strong right now as we speak. It's just unfortunate that we need to head off. Otherwise, we could talk even longer and bring in more comments. Please let us know in the comment section how you're feeling, if you agree or disagree with any of the panel today, the panel of contributors. It's always great to catch up with like-minded Celtic supporters, and it was great at the weekend to meet some of you as well. So thanks everybody for supporting what we do. And you can also come out on Saturday this weekend to watch the Champions League with Acsom, and also with Alan Stubbs and Tosh McKinley thrown in as well. Thanks everybody for getting involved, and thank you once again to Kevin, Ian and Quinny for joining me on A Celtic State of Mind.
Cheers.